Story number 1. I live in a small, usually quiet town where everyone knows each other, or at least that's what I thought. Living alone has its perks, like walking around in your PJs all day, or having cereal for dinner without anyone judging. But that Thursday, things changed when I found the first letter. It was tucked into my mailbox, an unremarkable white envelope with my name handwritten on it. No return address. Inside was a note, its message simple yet chilling. I like the way you rearrange your bookshelf. It's much better now. I remember freezing, a cold wave washing over me. My bookshelf, a chaotic mess I'd organized the day before, was in clear view of the living room window. I'd assumed I was alone, safe in my own world. At first, I tried to brush it off as a weird prank, maybe a friend trying to mess with me. But the letters didn't stop. They came daily, each detailing mundane parts of my life with an intimacy that made my skin crawl. "Your red sweater suits you better," one read. Another said, "Why do you look so sad watching that movie alone?" With each letter, the sender demanded small changes in my routine, like what to wear or what to eat. It was as if they were molding me into their version of perfection. The letters grew darker, more menacing. "Do as I say, or you'll regret it," one threatened. I felt trapped, watched from every angle. My home, once my sanctuary, became my prison. I tried changing my routines, covering my windows, but the feeling of being observed never left. Then, it escalated. One evening, I came home to find my front door ajar, the lock broken. Inside, my living room was vandalized, my belongings scattered and broken, a clear message of violation. But it was the note left on my kitchen counter that brought me to my knees. This is just the beginning. Fear became my constant companion, whispering scenarios of what could happen. Sleep was elusive, every noise a potential threat. I was jumping at shadows, seeing danger in every face that passed by. The psychological torment was relentless, a game of cat and mouse where I was the prey, and my stalker was always one step ahead. I knew I had to act, to reclaim my life from the clutches of this unseen tormentor. The police were out of the question. I had no concrete evidence, just letters and a broken lock. It dawned on me that the sender had to be someone close, someone who knew my routines, my likes and dislikes. The realization was a betrayal, cutting deeper than any letter. So I started my own investigation, observing those around me with a critical eye. Friends I'd known for years, neighbors I'd greeted daily. Everyone was a suspect. The trust that had once bound me to my community was shattered, replaced by suspicion and paranoia. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A casual conversation, a slip of the tongue, and suddenly, the pieces clicked. It was Tom, a neighbor I'd considered a friend, someone who'd been in my home, who knew my routines. The realization was sickening, a mixture of relief and horror. He'd always paid a bit too much attention, offered to help a little too eagerly. In my naivety, I'd mistaken it for neighborly kindness. Confronting him was terrifying. I saw the obsession in his eyes, the delusion that his actions were justified, a twisted form of affection. The confrontation didn't end the nightmare, but it marked the beginning of the end. With evidence in hand, I could finally seek help, expose him for the danger he was. The aftermath was a whirlwind of legal procedures and restraining orders, a blur of faces and questions. The fear lingered, a shadow at the edge of my vision, but it no longer controlled me. I'd stood up to it, faced it head on. Rebuilding my life took time. The scars, both physical and psychological, were slow to fade. But with each passing day, I found strength I never knew I had. The experience taught me about the fragility of safety, the importance of listening to my instincts, and the courage it takes to fight back. The letters stopped, and slowly, I reclaimed my space, my peace. But the echo of fear, the knowledge of how quickly safety can be shattered, remains. It's a reminder, a whisper to always stay vigilant, to never let my guard down again. Echoes of fear linger in the quiet moments. a reminder of the darkness that exists, but they also remind me of my resilience, my ability to face that darkness and emerge stronger. I am no longer a victim, but a survivor, forever changed, forever wary, but unbroken. Story number 2. The first time I noticed it, I was rummaging through my backpack looking for my calculus textbook. It was a small black device, tucked into a side pocket where I usually kept my pens. I remember thinking it was some kind of USB drive I'd forgotten about. But when I pressed the button on its side, it blinked alive with a green light, a GPS tracker. I laughed it off, figuring it was something my roommate Brian had misplaced. He was always losing his stuff. "Hey Brian, you looking for this?" I waved the tracker in the air when I got back to our dorm room. He glanced over, confused. "Never seen that before, dude. Maybe one of your lab partners?" he suggested, shrugging it off. I should have wondered why a lab partner would put a GPS tracker in my backpack, but exams were looming, and I had bigger things to worry about. So, I tossed it into my desk drawer and forgot about it. Days passed, and I started noticing odd things. My things moved slightly from where I left them. Doors I thought I had locked were slightly ajar, and shadows that lingered a bit too long outside my window. Paranoia, I told myself, was just the stress of finals. Then came the texts. Unknown numbers sending me messages like, "I see you're studying late again," or "You should wear that blue hoodie more, it suits you." I blocked the numbers, but the messages kept coming, each one more specific about my daily routines, my hangout spots, even mentioning conversations I had in private. That's when I remembered the tracker. I dug it out from my desk, the green light still blinking mockingly. Someone had been tracking me, but who, and for how long? The realization hit me like a cold wave. I wasn't just being paranoid, I was being watched. I tried to act normal, fearing any change in my behavior might provoke whoever was behind this. But inside, I was unraveling. I started taking different routes to my classes, looking over my shoulder, jumping at every unexpected sound. It was exhausting. One evening, I decided to confront the issue head-on. I sent a message to the unknown number. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The reply was instant, chilling me to the bone. "Meet me at the old playground by the elm tree. You know the one. Let's talk about old times. Just you and me." The old playground was where I used to hang out with my childhood friend Alex. We were inseparable until high school when things got weird. Alex became possessive, almost obsessive. It got so bad I had to cut him off completely. It couldn't be him, could it? He didn't even know where I went to college. Or did he? Against my better judgment, I went. The playground was deserted, the swings moving slightly in the cold breeze. I waited, every nerve on edge. Then he stepped out from the shadows. Alex, looking much the same as he did the last time I saw him. His smile was friendly, but his eyes were cold, hard. "Brian, man, it's been too long," he said, his voice smooth. Too smooth. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "How did you find me?" I managed to ask. He shrugged. "You'd be surprised what people share on social media. And once I had your location, well, it was easy to keep track." The conversation was surreal. Alex talked about wanting to pick up where we left off, as if I hadn't spent the last years of my life trying to forget him. When I tried to leave, he grabbed my arm, his grip iron. "You can't just walk away from me again, Brian. Not this time." I shoved him, panic giving me strength. He stumbled back, surprised, then lunged at me. We crashed to the ground, struggling. I thought about screaming, but who would hear me? In the scuffle, Alex's phone fell out of his pocket. Desperation clawed at my mind as I reached for it. Anything to get him off me. I managed to grab it, swinging it hard against his head. He went limp, unconscious. I didn't wait around. I ran as fast as I could back to the dorm, locking myself in. Brian was there, playing video games, oblivious to the nightmare I'd just lived. "Dude, you okay?" he asked, finally noticing my disheveled state. Story number 3. My name is Mia, and my world turned upside down the day I said no. It was to a guy I barely knew, Jake. who had asked me out in what could only be described as the most awkward moment of my life. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. At first, it was just a friend request on social media, then another and another, all from accounts I didn't recognize, profiles filled with nothing but blank spaces and a single photo, mine. The messages started off as simple hellos, escalating to paragraphs filled with anger and accusations. I blocked each one, but like a hydra, 2 more would take its place. Then came the photos. Pictures of me at the cafe where I worked, walking through the park, sitting in class. Photos taken from a distance, but close enough to see the expression on my face. Fear. I told myself it was just some sick prank, but the pit in my stomach said otherwise. I started changing my routines, taking different routes home. But the photos kept coming, each accompanied by a message, now taunting me. "You can't hide," one said. "I'm always watching," said another. My friends told me to go to the police, but what would I tell them? I had no proof, no idea who was doing this. Then it happened. I was walking home one night, the street deserted, the only sound my footsteps echoing off the walls. I felt a presence behind me and turned just in time to see a figure lunging out of the shadows. The attack was swift, brutal. I fought back, screaming, but the attacker was relentless. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it was over. The figure vanished into the night, leaving me bruised and shaken on the pavement. The physical wounds healed, but the scars inside took longer. I was afraid to go out, to be alone. My social media accounts, once a place of connection, now felt like a battlefield. I shut them down, trying to disappear from the digital world, but the fear remained. Determined not to let this person control my life, I started taking self-defense classes, found a therapist, and slowly began to rebuild myself. I became obsessed with finding my stalker, poring over the photos, the messages, trying to find any clue that might lead me to them. It was a tiny detail in one of the pictures that finally gave them away. A reflection in a mirror, distorted and barely noticeable. But it was enough. Jake, standing in the background, camera in hand. I felt a mix of relief and horror. Relief that I finally knew who it was, and horror at the realization that it was someone I knew, someone who had been close enough to touch. Armed with this knowledge, I went to the authorities. It wasn't easy. The process was slow, frustrating, filled with questions and doubts. But I persisted, driven by the need to see justice done, to reclaim my life from the shadows.